The world that television portrays, the world of cops and robbers, of inane comedies, of superheroes and fantasy space adventures, and of mindless cartoons, is a world that's at least slightly out of its mind.
Do you know where your children are tonight? I do. They are with me, and they will...
What always puzzles me is why parents aren't more alarmed about this situation and why they don't make their wishes felt, but they don't.
Oh, I'll ground you all right into hamburger.
Television definitely is teaching all the time, just like parents are teaching all the time, not just when they think they are. It does more educating than the schools and all of our institutions of higher learning thrown together.
TV has the power to influence a lot of things. I mean, you have to use it in the right way.
A lot of people may recognize this room as a place very much like one they frequented in their youth, a place where students look to the teacher for education. Long before today's children begin school, another teacher will have commanded their attendance and attention. This new teacher, television, has engineered a vast revolution of the senses. It has altered the way we send and receive information and has profoundly affected the way we learn. TV has been called a teaching machine, a consciousness industry, the central nervous system of the nation. Thanks to its instantaneous electronic delivery, TV has access to almost every living room and every mind. I'm Edwin Newman. In this program, we're looking at television as an educational institution with its own curriculum. In 1960, Marshall McLuhan suggested that school gets in the way of the more vital education, which, he said, takes place through television.
In the 19th century, the knowledge inside the schoolroom was higher than the knowledge outside. Today, it is reversed. The child knows that in going to school, he is, in a sense, interrupting his education.
I learned everything I know from television. I think Chris actually learned a lot of his ABCs and numbers from watching Sesame Street.
According to the 1990 Nielsen report on television, children aged 6 to 11 watch TV more than 26 hours every week, on average. By the time they graduate from high school, they will have put in 11,000 hours in school and 15,000 hours watching TV. Before they even get to first grade, they will have spent as much time in front of the tube as they may later spend in class in 4 years of college. And most of the programs they see are made for adults.
I know you look at me and just see man candy.
My favorite show is Married Children. I like that because it's funny and it's good to watch for little kids. I watch it.
Everything that comes on television is educating in the broadest sense of the word. Everything that you're exposed to for so many hours a day, and remember, American children are watching about 5 hours a day. You have to be learning something.
Given this a lot of thought, I decided to have this baby on my own.
Now, just what is the significance of this information we receive through the images and sounds of television? Does TV teach, or is it just entertainment?
Entertainment is the most powerful educational force of any culture. Entertainment is the information that people seek when they don't seek any information. Entertainment is something that we absorb because of its own rewards. Because we enjoy it, and therefore we absorb it, we integrate it into our framework of knowledge.
Let's go dancing!
Lambada! Most of what we know, or think we know, has come from entertainment and not from information, not from news, and not even necessarily from the schools.
Conveying more information simultaneously to more people than any other means known to civilization, television has become our primary educational system, albeit an informal rather than a formal one.
In the Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy! Civil War for 400 Lee surrendered.
There is some incidental instruction going on in all program forms, including those not usually regarded as educational.
Geography for 800, please. Answer. It's the longest U.S. river east of the Mississippi. David.
What is the Ohio?
That's correct.
Some TV personalities even sound a lot like educators.
Not much in the news today. This is the anniversary of the discovery of the Virgin Islands. How many of you knew that?
What is wrong? Hold it.
From the situation comedy Benson, some members of the audience learned the Heimlich maneuver when Benson saved a colleague from choking.
She wasn't talking or breathing or anything. And he said, Ma, I saw this on Benson. I know what to do.
I lifted her up and squeezed her in the stomach.
And the candy came out?
Yeah. She bent it over and she coughed.
There is, of course, some programming whose main purpose is to inform. For instance, the PSA or public service announcement.
And someday, one of them could save your life, but only if you buckle it up.
Now that we've explored a few ways in which TV teaches...
Excuse me, Mr. Newman, but it might be that we're forgetting something important here. Because there have been a lot of programs made over the years for children, some for educational purposes. Why, I myself have taught on TV. You know, many children have learned about between, for instance.
And now the ping pong ball, the donut, and the phonograph record, and the top of the table are between me and one of the ugliest monsters I've ever seen.
And another thing, you don't have to be a child to learn something from TV.
Let's get right to it, if we can, Kermit.
Yes, I'll be happy to do that, Ted. Now, one of the most important aspects of the market is liquidity. Now, liquidity is the ease with which you can convert an asset or investment into cash.
Television teaches a great deal. You know, any television teaches little bitty kids. It teaches vocabulary. It teaches the way the rest of the world looks, the way people talk. It teaches them the world outside of their house, which is before television, kids, preschool kids, only really saw what was inside of their house. And so television basically is teaching, no matter whether you want it to teach or not.
When I was about 6, I went up to my parents and said, Crest has been shown to be an effective decay preventative dentifrice that can be of significant value when used in a conscientiously applied program of oral hygiene and regular professional care. And my parents said, where did you get those kind of words? Where'd you get that? I said, the TV.
Because of their abundance and continual repetition, certain messages in everyday TV programming constitute what may be regarded as a curriculum. About 20% of all airtime is devoted to expensive lessons in consumption. They're usually called commercials.
Every 7 minutes you get a commercial telling you to buy something.
Use Reynolds quality plastic wrap.
Get Metaprint. Get Milk-Bone Dog Biscuits.
So we're built around that notion that we do buy things, we consume things, and the television is really going to tell us what we really need, even if we don't need it.
You need a chainsaw you can depend on.
Advertising will always promote consumption. And I think that the audience will always need to be discerning and learn to be discerning about what the limitations are on consumption.
I want that! I saw them in the store, so I wanted to buy it.
Whoa, getting a little carried away. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
When the commercials come on, he definitely wants a lot of these things. And at times it's okay, but at times it puts pressure on the parents that they have to buy all these different things, and sometimes you can't. I estimate that it's been, upwards at least maybe $1,000 between all the different things that you end up buying for him because of the turtle phenomenon.
It encourages children to want what they can't necessarily have. This advertising for all these glistening, glittery kinds of things, it goes to children of all socioeconomic levels. They can't all have it.
And yet they see it on TV, they see it on the sitcoms, and they believe that is part of their world, and they should be a part of it, and they want to be a part of it. They do.
The advertisers and broadcasters are ganging up on children, manipulating them with the worst advertising we have in this country. It's always a problem to sell to children because, especially for young children, they don't really understand that we permit people to say things that are exaggerations about products.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
In the process of pitching products to viewers, TV is selling a whole lot more. It's the indirect teachings of television, including the subliminal messages that most effectively advance TV's commercial curriculum.
Everything that's done on television is a lesson. As a matter of fact, there have been abundant studies to show that children are learning lessons that are distorted lessons.
Boy, you got a lot of pep pepperoni in your bread.
It's not a better body you need. It's better genes.
What do they see? They see bimbo blondes, or they see Marlboro men. Constantly, this is piped into your house 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a day. We have images and stereotypes just so constantly presented to all people. And it's not just the children. I think it influences everybody.
Watching Beverly Hills 90210, and I see all these beautiful girls that live in Beverly Hills and how they all look thin in their bikinis and the gorgeous long blonde hair, perfect complexions. You see all the girls with their gorgeous football player boyfriends and everything. We want to be just like them, and we don't care what anyone thinks about us. We just want to be exactly like them.
In all the shows, the pretty girls have dates, and the fat girls are a joke. And my girls aren't fat, and I still, no matter how thin they get, they feel they should be thinner. I think TV really does teach in beer commercials that the girls have to be beautiful and sexy.
I see the guy there with a beer and then a beautiful-looking girl next to him and everything. You know, a guy sitting, 16-year-old kid sitting there, he's like, oh, if you drink beer, you can be cool, get the girl and everything.
A recent study by Planned Parenthood revealed that in a typical television season, the average adolescent views 14,000 instances of sexual contact or sexual innuendo in TV ads and programs. Less than 2% make any reference to any possible consequences.
I need her.
Soap operas average 35 romantic encounters per hour.
They have learned to be very flip about violence and sex and drinking and pregnancy and AIDS and all of that. They're very flip about it, and it's a shame that they can't get a more accurate picture of it from television. Television makes anything seem normal. No matter how ugly it is, you get used to looking at it, therefore it becomes commonplace.
Programmers use another device to keep us glued to the tube, an element that almost never appears in the commercials: violence. Today's youth will have witnessed almost 20,000 murders and countless acts of aggression before they graduate from high school. Violence is a major course in television's curriculum.
Using violence to amuse ourselves is a very dangerous game. True, violence is part of our society, but we need to be able to deal effectively with violence rather than incorporate it as a mainstay of our amusement.
On with the fun!
The kids who I've been working with, they enjoy wrestling, they emulate wrestlers, major wrestlers. They know the holes, the choke holes, and all kinds of other things that can hurt another child. The kids who watch wrestling or a Ninja Turtle cartoon and come in and want to beat each other up. They are actually practicing what they see.
Television is not the only thing that causes aggression in our society. It would be absolutely simplistic and stupid to say that. But it contributes. And the researchers who've been following children over periods of time, the longitudinal studies find it again and again that heavy viewers of television violence tend to be more aggressive than children who are not watching those programs.
I'm not so sure that the evidence is clear. The kind of violence that very often got counted as violence. It was Bugs Bunny getting squashed, or some other kind of a cartoon act that was not real violence nor imitatable of violence.
This'll be a killer, a killer.
Very often those were added into the overall count of violence on children's television, and I gave a very improper picture.
Almost always the cartoon violence, the 25 violent acts per hour of cartoons, is set in a humorous context. That sends a message to the youngster, the 2-year-old, the 3-year-old, 4-year-old, or the 12-year-old who's watching, that it's silly, that it's nothing to be concerned about, that you can laugh at other people being hurt. And that's a frightening message.
We've suffered cultural meltdown on the issue of violence and values.
Kids see in their lives violence in their schools, violence on television. We are communicating a system of values and beliefs that has nothing to do with discipline and obeying rules. We are sending out signals of defiance. We are underscoring in the way we communicate through our mass media all kinds of values that are inconsistent with obeying the law, with trying to fit in and be part of a greater whole for the good of the greater number. We are almost destroying ourselves with the messages we're sending out.
The cumulative effect is something that we had better pay attention to, and the cumulative effect is to encourage violence, it's to encourage self-servingness, it's to encourage anti-intellectualism.
I don't know what they have to say. It makes no difference anyway. Whatever it is, I'm against it.
Just how does the curriculum of TV affect what goes on in the classroom? Ask any teacher.
Most of them are drawing Ninja Turtles, or they're drawing somebody with a gun shooting somebody and blood coming out.
This is the guy I can make with the weapons from it.
When you're trying to get children to resolve their conflicts, you really do have a problem, because in their minds, the real way to solve something quickly and, without any problem is just to bash somebody. They see it on television and they feel that's what you need to do, so it's very difficult to try and get them to talk it out.
Teachers complain that the portrayal of school on TV strongly affects the way people regard school in real life.
All right, class. Chapter 5 is entitled The Origins of...
TV has long defined the school through potent stereotypes.
I mean, sir, you're like a real human being.
Mr. Krabs.
And that ain't easy considering you're a teacher.
Watch it. I saw that.
Today, more often than not, the image of teachers on television is less than ideal.
Usually, the teachers are portrayed having no control over the children, just imparting knowledge that's not important, and making school seem like a waste of time, that you could be somewhere else having a better time doing other things.
Critics assert that the new educational system, television, portrays the old educational system, school, as backward and inept.
Hey, tu brute! Oh, man, get a job, you old windbag.
The portrayal of education and educators on television is shameful, bordering on decadent.
You're our teacher?
You see the teacher as buffoon, music videos, or as sex object, hot for teacher.
I'm hot for teacher.
Twisted sister throwing the teacher through a basketball hoop.
Critics further fault TV for underreporting noteworthy school events and overreporting stories about violence in the schools.
Following yesterday's fatal shooting of 2 10th graders.
Just a small segment to say to the world, yes, there's something else happening out there besides killing and murdering and robbing and children getting hurt and teachers getting shot and all the other things that are going on.
So I'm not surprised that a student would say, I don't want to be a teacher. It's not very well respected. It's not paid very much. I mean, why should one want to enter that profession that's so denigrated by our society, who doesn't see that these people are important?
Perhaps the most negative stereotype of a scholar on TV is reserved for the scientist.
And just how does it work, Professor Nitwit?
In our studies, we have found that the more you watch television, the more you believe that scientists are a bit odd.
Alive, do you hear me?
They're older, they're stranger, they're more likely to be foreign. They hardly ever have families. They hardly ever engage in a romance. They are loners, and they are doing very dangerous work and very vulnerable to all kinds of accidents or being blown up. The viewers and the children who watch this absorb these and come up with a relatively negative attitude of science as an occupation. The more they watch television, the less they want to be a scientist.
Analysts find other troubling links between television viewing and formal education.
That you get used to a certain pacing from the television, and it creates a whole different way of thinking. It turns out, because of the tremendous amount of material that's presented and the rapidity of presentation, you don't process it very well. As a result, we find that children who watch less television actually seem to have a better knowledge of the world and world information.
The National Geographic Society today announced the results of a survey of geographical literacy, which tested Americans and people of 8 other countries. American adults came 6th in the test. American youth came last.
In 1992, an international survey of achievement scores ranked American students near the bottom in science and math, but on top in the number of hours spent watching TV.
We have a whole heritage in America that depends upon, that rests upon an understanding of the printed word, an understanding of our record. And that all, I think, has been radically de-emphasized. It has been sort of wiped away by this falsely soothing and gratifying time-present medium of television. And I think we're paying a heavy price for that.
A recent study says the United States could enter the next century with a virtually untrainable pool of 90 million illiterate citizens.
What would we do without television? It'd be tough. Americans would have to learn to read. Can't have that.
We cannot blame the schools alone for the dismal decline in SAT verbal scores. When our kids come home from school, do they pick up a book? Or do they sit glued to the tube watching music videos? Parents, don't make the mistake of thinking your kids only learn from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Everybody in the country is wringing hands about the dropout rate, about the schools being asked to do more than they can do, about our competition internationally and our competitive status and how much we need to attend to our nation's educational problem. And here we are neglecting to use the most powerful tool around by which to do that.
The United States is virtually the only country in the world that has allowed private commercial interests to determine the vast majority of the programming coming over the public airwaves into people's homes.
It's not working because the people who light up our television screen are more interested in getting every last penny than in doing anything that promotes the public good. It is a short-sighted, short-range way of thinking about running a business.
There are good broadcasters and there are bad broadcasters. There are those that have an ability and an interest in educating, serving, and informing the public, and then there are those that don't have that much of an interest.
Advertising is its business, not educating, not even entertaining. It's attracting viewers, whatever that takes, and selling those viewers to advertisers.
There's no law that says that we have to have advertising on television. The problem is that's how you pay the bills. So it's a question of if you don't have advertising, how do you pay for the programming?
We're constantly caught between this thing of this industry whose reason is to sell products and this great cultural force that's changing the way we're all thinking.
Well, there's another nice mess you've gotten me into.
When television began in this country, the commercial approach appeared to work reasonably well. Broadcasting pioneers promised that the new technology would provide the best of everything. History, music, the arts, science, drama. They described the new medium as the university of the air, a window on the world, a brilliance in the sky.
In the early days of television, of course, it was a very elitist medium. Television sets were scarce. They were expensive. The working class family couldn't afford television in the early years, and the founding fathers, the Paleys and the Sarnoffs and these people, really did feel that they were broadcasting to an elite strata of the American culture, and the programming really did reflect that. I mean, networks had studio orchestras. There were thoughtful discussions, news programs.
In See It Now, a document for television based on the week's news.
Especially popular were children's programs, which figured prominently in early TV schedules.
Morning, boys and girls.
A pioneer in children's television, producer George Heinemann recalls the era well.
Everyone found out that children love television, and they demanded at home that they have television in the home, and it sold television sets.
kids, what time is it?
Howdy Doody gleefully ran in the latter part of the afternoon, and then, of course, the numbers were phenomenal. 50 shares out of 100, every 100 people, 50 sets were tuned to Howdy Doody.
Want your magic twanger, Froggy?
Hiya, kid, hiya. By 1955, there were more shows for children than there were soap operas, variety, news, or dramatic programs.
Many, many programs for children. Fine qualities in those programs. Mr. Wizard, who cared about that science. Captain Kangaroo, who was serious about those educational points.
Why do they call me Kangaroo? Well, that's pretty easy to see. Look at this right here, you see? See the great big pockets I've got? Look at them. Just loaded down. That's why, because I got pockets like a kangaroo.
They wanted young families to buy television sets, to get hooked up, because the more families were hooked up, the higher the rates they could charge for the advertising.
Sets became cheaper, more and more people bought them. The mass audience came into being, and the masters of television began to program to what they call the lowest common denominator.
By the late 1950s, westerns and crime dramas dominated prime time. To the dismay of many, violence was established as a major part of the curriculum of commercial television. Cultural programming had faded, and entertainment prevailed.
You like to be queen for a day?
With the rise of the quiz show, advertising revenues soared.
In just a moment, Charles Van Doren, whose winnings to date here on 21 amount to $143,000.
For each program, the producer would ask me the questions. I usually could answer them. Even when I could answer them, however, he would say that my answers were not entertaining, not interesting enough. And he would tell me then what manner to answer these questions.
Raising doubts about the integrity of our television system, the quiz show scandals led government officials to reprimand broadcasters for allowing commercial interests to compromise program standards. To avoid punitive action, CBS hastily dropped the quiz shows and added documentaries in prime time. While national attention focused on prime time, few took notice when the networks removed children's shows from weekday afternoons.
They realized that an adult audience member is worth exactly 30 times what a child audience member is worth in economic terms.
The advertisers put the pressures on the networks and said, look, we want an audience flow for the whole afternoon. And when you come up with high numbers for a children's program at 4:30 and 5 o'clock, that disrupts our flow of audience and consequently doesn't set us up for the news and doesn't set us up for sales.
What's up, Doc?
And so, actually, the Saturday morning ghetto was born. We went into the era of the funnies, the cartoons, and all the old cartoons, Roadrunner, Bugs Bunny, and all the other things were never made for children. They were made for adults in theaters. But they bought them up, grabbed them up, and ran them on Saturday morning. And of course, they were getting a tremendous amount of unmotivated violence, really unmotivated violence. I mean, sock bam, crash and ma'am.
The cartoons may not have been made for children, but the ads were. Initially spurned as insubstantial, the child audience turned out to be an unexpected bonanza. The Saturday morning ghetto ushered in a glut of commercials aimed at children.
Frosted Flakes. Now take your army gun in hand, load, and fire.
In 1961, reflecting on the pronounced decline in cultural and children's programs, Newton Minow, the newly appointed chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, sharply criticized television leaders in a memorable address.
I invite each of you to sit down in front of your own television set when your station goes on the air. Keep your eyes glued to that set until the station signs off. I can assure you that what you will observe is a vast wasteland.
Today, that 1961 speech is remembered for two words, but not the two words that I wanted to be remembered. The words we tried to advance were public interest.
Although Mino's speech sparked national debate about television, including its effect on the young, little changed.
There were a lot of cartoons in 1968, adventure cartoons, monster cartoons, animal cartoons. When I started Action for Children's Television, it was just to get some terrific programs on TV for my children. I thought when I turned on the set, there really wasn't enough choice for us. Anyway, I found that there was a law that said in return for the license that the station uses to broadcast, they have to serve the public. And that was the hook.
That hook, the Communications Act of 1934, still governs radio and television broadcasting today. The law obliges all stations to serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity. Senator Clarence Dill of Washington State, the principal author of the act, later reflected on television's subsequent development.
When we wrote the Communications Act, we had not then foreseen the fact that radio and stations were going to, and television stations were going to become devoted to making money rather than to serving the people.
The fact is that the airwaves belong to the public in perpetuity. They can never be sold into private hands. That's established in the law. And so if the commercial stations are going to use the airwaves, they owe the public something back in return, and that's the contract. We call it a quid pro quo, give and take.
We can go back to the letter of the law and say, hey, you're supposed to be educating in return for using that license.
In 1970, ACT petitioned the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, to require 2 hours a day of educational programming for children and to ban all commercials aimed at children. In 1972, Peggy Charon testified before Congress.
In the many frank discussions we've had with the industry, there is no pretense about how children are considered in the elegant boardrooms where decisions are made. They are simply another block of buyers to be cajoled and exploited.
There's been a disintegration, there's been a degeneration, and I would hope that something would happen as a result of these hearings and these studies that will help to lift up the mind of man rather than to bring it further down in the gutter.
More than 100,000 letters poured in supporting the ACT petition. Fearful that the government would impose strict requirements for children's television, the networks re-evaluated their programming strategy.
I suddenly was appointed the new vice president in charge of children's programming for NBC.
ABC felt as though they needed to make a commitment to some better programs, and the ABC after-school specials were instigated, and another little program called Schoolhouse Rock that was running in and out of the Saturday morning programs.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol
We were
Hill.
serving children that were in the junior high school age range that had been pretty much forgotten.
CBS, NBC, and ABC created a wealth of offerings for children.
From CBS News, this is 30 Minutes.
The newly created public broadcasting service began to air a new type of children's programming.
6, 5,
4.
4, thank you.
I don't think anyone questions that television can bring values and quality.
What's the last one?
I don't know.
1.
Yeah, 1, yeah! When they heard the FCC was going to make rules on children's television, all 3 networks called us up and said, can you help provide some programming, quality children's programming, once those rules are made. And so we were in early development with 2 networks, as I recall. And the second they heard the FCC wasn't going to demand this, they all dropped it.
In 1979, the FCC issued a 5-volume report indicating that commercial television had not complied with the voluntary guidelines and had failed to meet minimal levels of educational programming. This report called for mandatory rules concerning the amount, type, and scheduling of children's programs. But a new decade ushered in a new administration with a different philosophy.
When Ronald Reagan got elected, with his deregulatory philosophy of life, with his sense that what's good for CBS is good for children, the trickle-down theory of communications, the let's take the gloves off and let's let business run the country. It isn't only the S&Ls that happened. It isn't only these mega deals that are now putting people on Wall Street in jail. It's children's television that suffered.
People like Peggy Charon and others who want to have the government put its heavy hand on the control knobs. Not necessary. The people can decide that for themselves.
The market-oriented approach favored by the Fowler FCC triggered a decade of debate in Congress and the FCC on the issue of children's programming. In 1983, Congress considered the Children's Television Education Act, which would have required every station to provide 1 hour a day of educational programming.
The nation's broadcasters do not need the government to be its programming partner. The Commission's proposal is very intrusive in a sensitive First Amendment area.
When they inject the First Amendment threat, they're using the First Amendment as a smokescreen, and they're trying an attempt to hide behind it. The real issue is money and the buck.
Results on children's programming show that this nation's commercial broadcasters devote only 61 minutes a week to educational programming for children, or 0.75% of their daily airtime.
The problem is that as a nation, we have not dedicated ourselves to using broadcasting to support schoolroom learning and to create a learning society that will help us achieve the national goals that we all applaud.
The Children's Television Education Act never came to a vote, and public awareness of the issues debated was minimal.
You ask why the public's not involved. Who's going to tell the public except the media itself? And it's not in their interest to educate the public as to what the bills are in Congress that they could write their congressman about. So that, if you will, there's a kind of blackout on that kind of those kinds of bills. They're not going to be widely publicized.
With little public involvement and a climate of deregulation in Washington, broadcasters felt little obligation to serve the child audience.
And I don't think the federal government in Washington, D.C. can mandate through legislation or through regulation what should be seen by our local citizens across America.
The children's programs went away. Captain Kangaroo was the single remaining weekday series on any of the 3 commercial networks. When that went away in 1983 or 1984, there were no more weekday children's series offered.
Captain Kangaroo himself, Robert Keeshan, was among those who testified before the FCC in December 1983.
CBS and other people over the years have said, well, the captain had a very small audience. Well, my God, if I had a large audience, I'd start questioning what I was doing wrong. 15% of this nation is the total juvenile audience. How can I possibly, by commercial network standards, build a large audience when I start with that small number? So there is no good commercial reason for doing quality-oriented children's programming. The marketplace will not take care of the child audience.
Seems to me
Mark
that public
Fowler,
television
the
has a role.
head of FCC, he made it clear he wasn't intending to regulate. Action for Children's Television had waited a dozen years for its petition to get a response from the FCC. They acted and they denied it. They denied the petition. They denied that the FCC should impose any regulations at all on commercial television. The failure of the FCC to regulate kicked the matter over into the halls of Congress. Suddenly Congress would have to act on this.
Pressing Congress to pass new legislation for children's television, ACT used the occasion of its 20th anniversary in 1988 to advance the pending legislation.
I can't believe I met Mr. Rogers. And his first name's Fred. I didn't know he had a first name.
Some of you may know that after 30 years of struggle, it looks like the people of America may finally get a bill to improve television for our children.
As currently drafted, the legislation would reinstate meaningful commercial time limits on children's programming and prohibit certain abusive advertising practices directed towards children.
In the fall of 1988, a bill was passed overwhelmingly by both houses. To the surprise of industry leaders and members of Congress, President Reagan pocket vetoed the bill, calling it a violation of the First Amendment. The Reagan veto led to another round of congressional hearings in 1989.
The Reagan administration seems to be saying that the broadcaster could never be called to account to render any public service, that it can operate precisely as it wishes, rendering 100% home shopping if it feels like it, or MTV, and still be renewed.
I haven't seen any empirical evidence anywhere that non-deceptive, accurate, truthful advertising is harmful to children.
We're strip mining our children's minds and doing it for commercial profit without any concern for the longer-term consequences for them and for our society. Let's stop all this commercial huckstering aimed at children. If the regulators won't act to improve children's television, and the broadcasters won't do it themselves, then we in Congress have to make it happen.
Like President Reagan, President Bush questioned the constitutionality of the legislation, but he allowed the Children's Television Act of 1990 to become law without his signature. The new act requires the FCC to set limits on advertising in children's programs and mandates that broadcasters, as a condition for renewal of their licenses, serve the education and information needs of children. However, it leaves that mandate undefined.
Unfortunately, the bill itself is not only toothless, but it simply stabilizes the existing industry standard. So if anything, it will give industry protection, not pressure to reduce, but protection to maintain a relatively high standard of commercial content during children's television programming, which is pretty much what they're doing now.
We must focus on what it does do and what opportunity it gives the public now to hold stations responsible for what they should have been doing anyway, which is considering children part of the public that they are licensed to serve.
On this Friday night, we have chosen a woman who has spent many years worrying about Saturday morning. After 23 years of pressure on government and the broadcast industry, and now that the law has been passed, Peggy Charon says it is up to parents and teachers to take up the fight for quality.
One prominent organization that has taken up the fight to make children's television a priority is the National PTA.
The PTA accepts the challenge and will do its very best to see that local affiliate PTAs across this nation are aware of the importance of increasing the quality programming for children in this country. The National PTA is going to be asking every local PTA, and there are 29,000 across this nation, to conduct at least one workshop within their school community for parents, emphasizing the importance of the implementation of this new law.
Let the broadcasters know that you are watching them, that you know about this law, and that you expect them to comply with more than just the minimum. Creating that kind of climate and raising the level of public expectation is really going to be the key. I think you will see them responding locally and nationally if we do this. I want to make sure that I stress here that we need to be very careful not to use this law as a way to censor. And what we really want to see here is diversity and choice. We want to see a range, a variety of programs.
Yeah, it's a sense of taking back our own culture, which I feel like we've lost to the media. And it's a very strong pull to pull it back and take it back.
It's going to take the efforts of teachers in the school, of school districts, of community leaders, of representatives from business and industry, and ultimately, I hope it grows from community to community all over this nation so that we will make a national commitment to really use television to be what it can be to our children, and that's the most important educational tool available to us today.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes.
The Public Broadcasting Service, PBS, provides the bulk of educational and informational programming in the United States.
Well, that's why we have a PBS system. PBS should be educating our people, and the commercial stations should be handling the other side of it. That's why the federal government puts so much money into the public system in America, because that's one of the niches they're supposed to serve.
Just how much money does the federal government spend on public television? All told, it's about $1 a person a year. By contrast, Japan spends $17 per person per year, and the United Kingdom spends $38 per person.
It's all part of being part of an organisation called the BBC, which is funded currently by a licence fee paid by everyone who has a television set. We cover every genre. We're, if you like, a microcosm of adult television. We do everything from news to drama to comedy, entertainment, the whole range.
Aslan didn't tell Pole what would happen if she followed the signs.
There has been a kind of commitment to the child audience which I don't find in the majority of American programming.
Japanese and the British really put us to shame. We're a country 4 times as large as Britain, 2 times as large as Japan, so we have this much vaster population base to support decent programs for kids, and we still don't do it.
Lord knows we're the only country in the world where television does not treat children with the kind of special care, with mandates of programming of a positive nature that must be done for children.
What can the concerned viewer do to harness the unprecedented potential of television for education?
We can learn how to respond back to the television system so that we become more active watchers instead of just passive consumers.
At some schools and universities, the study of television itself, media education or media literacy, has been added to the curriculum.
Media literacy undergirds all subjects that we teach in the media age. And if we can't analyze the media while we're teaching those subjects, then we've left out part of the world kids are living in.
They show him that he enjoys the car as much as he is enjoying his little baby. So they think that the value of the car is just as good as his baby.
I thought they were trying to make a sort of romantic thing about this car that wasn't really wonderful. And they tried to like hook it together with loving your kid.
Like a great baby goes into a great car or something.
To be media literate, to be media savvy, to be media knowledgeable, is to be able to survive, to be able to see through the advertising, to be able to understand the conventions of the media, to be able to see the value system that's there, to be able to make their own media.
Hi, welcome to Kids 4 Evening News. I'm David Faby.
And I'm Ann O'Brien. Tonight's top.
They do everything from conceptualizing ideas for television programming to writing the scripts to doing storyboards and becoming producers. By the time they get through with their 1, 2, or 3 years in Kids 4, they are absolutely professional, media literate young viewers at age 13.
Education has to go towards video, and it's got to be a part of the future, and there's no way you can really stop it. So what you really should be doing and what the educators should be doing is trying to harness it, trying to get on top of it, figuring out what it does and how to use it.
Possibilities abound for the creative use of television for education, both inside and outside the classroom.
We use it all the time. I mean, we use videotapes from Nova and all kinds of things in the classroom. It's a fabulous way to communicate the information really directly.
For schools wired to receive cable TV, some information services supported by cable networks and local operators are available free.
Welcome to CNN Newsroom. I'm Brian Todd.
And I'm Cassandra Henderson. It isn't hard to know its history if it's
This
already
school
in
news
there.
service, for example, helps teachers supplement their lesson plans with current news programming and specialized online databases. Study guides and textbooks are coordinated with the video material. Newer technologies, including the video cassette, the video disc, and interactive programs, hold great promise for specialized learning. Geography, for instance, becomes vivid for students using a computer-based program.
What would you like to see a picture of?
A volcano.
There's one right there. It's Mount St. Helens. It's a big volcano.
To harness the power of television for the education of our nation's children, everyone must get involved. Television programmers, government leaders, teachers, and above all, parents.
Those people have to be nuts. What's the bungee break? Exactly.
You and your children are going to be watching television. The important thing is for you to sit down with that child, watch that program together, and then analyze it. Begin to talk about it. Give your own family values and your own beliefs. And is that really reality, what that child is seeing? Is it just fiction? So our kids begin to separate out fiction from reality.
You don't understand, Dad. I love him.
You don't know what you're talking about. You can't possibly know what love is yet.
I know love is more than taking a shower with the bimbo du jour.
Sometimes parents don't, at least I didn't, understand the power of television. It was affecting the way Julie was behaving.
Parents have to realize that there is a stranger in your house. If you came home and you found a strange man in your house teaching your kids to punch each other or trying to sell them all kinds of products, you kick him right out of the house. But here you are, you come in and the TV is on and you don't think twice about it.
Sex, condoms, drugs, alcohol. I have a 9-year-old. I shouldn't have to explain all of this early. Beverly Hills 90210, when the older brother in the program was debating whether he should sleep with his girlfriend or not. And the whole issue that Dad and the brother had to go through as to whether they were careful and did he use a condom. And I'm like, okay, fine, now you've dropped this in my lap. I have a 9-year-old watching this show that's hooked on Luke Perry and Jason Priestley. Now I have to explain this? Thank you very much. It makes it difficult. It makes it difficult. And then I had the fortunate experience of sitting in a workshop with PTA. And that taught me a lot more about how to watch TV, how to watch better, be more sensitive to what I'm watching myself as well as what it's actually telling my kid.
Often when children watch a 30-minute program, what they're really watching is a 30-minute commercial for a product.
Television viewing is often very habitual. It's by habit. It doesn't matter what's on.
It's noise.
Right. Some people call this the glow and flow theory, that they just like that warm thing in the corner. You know, they like the idea. It's like, or the electronic hearth. It's something that we do because we don't have anything else to do, and we don't always do it in a selective kind of way.
So you as a parent have got to be able to look at a schedule and to determine what's on the air. My gosh, we have cable television, public television, we have network television. There's an array of things. There has to be something there that's worthwhile, educational, and informational for your child. The real trick is for you to know what it is, where it is, and tune into those programs.
We find that those parents who do that sort of thing, if we follow the kids over a period of a year or two, the kids actually are learning more, understanding the television better, and functioning better in a lot of other ways.
The only thing you can do with your children about television is to try your best to get them to think for themselves. They can't just watch and accept. They have to question everything they see on television. You have a lot of power with your children if you take the time to talk to them honestly. Children are pretty intelligent and they can pick you up as a phony right away. They're not quite so quick to pick up the falseness in television. So you have to provide them some truth.
Whatever you think that television should be doing, make sure you know the choices and take a stand. All of us are the children of television, its lifelong students. Think about it. Are you going to become involved in the programming of television? Or are you going to sit back and let television program you?
That concerns me, partner. That concerns me a lot.
If I were in charge of TV, then I'd probably never leave the house.
I'd just probably watch TV straight through the whole day. If I was in charge of TV, I'll put on a cartoon on each channel.
Kids watch more television than ever before, so if they're going to watch television, they might as well become educated by it.
I would like to see more real things, more real people on TV, instead of people just acting out or cartoons.
I would add maybe more science shows and add just more realistic shows.
Put the bad shows on late, so when the kids would be asleep, maybe the grown-ups could just watch them.
Television influences a lot of minds, so why not give them a positive influence and help make America better?